a doll and get your mother a large 4 cheese from Tony's?
There's no money in here.
You pay for it then. I know you're making money.
Let's do this.
What do you say you and I move to California? Would you like that? Okay. It's a promise then.
Hello and welcome to Frame by Frame.
The only TV and film review show on the internet hosted by us.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Nick, and this week we're here to talk to you about Don't Breathe.
So Don't Breathe, the story is very simple, and it's probably in film where the less you know going in, the better. So the plot goes, 3 young thieves break into the house of a blind man, hoping for an easy score, but the blind man isn't as helpless as he seems.
Good news, I got another job. This guy's got at least $300K.
Is he blind?
That's kind of messed up to rob a blind guy, isn't it?
Just because he's blind don't mean he's a saint, bro.
It's gonna be a piece of cake.
So Nick, I thought the Don't Breathe title was a great title for the movie because I found myself short of breath a few times during this movie.
Definitely one of those films where very suspenseful. You're on the edge of your seat for quite a long portion of the film.
Tense, yeah, suspenseful. How did you enjoy it?
I quite liked it. As a standalone film, it's, like I said, got a lot of suspense, good characters, and I liked there's not many action sequences, but the very small, minute ones that do occur within the blind man's house. They're pretty good. I definitely, and a lot of people who haven't seen the film yet, you would have seen on the trailers, they refer to this film as being the best horror film in the last 20 years. And I think if you go into that film, much in the way that I did, expecting to see something sort of revolutionary, like horrifying, scary, don't hold your breath. You're not gonna get that.
I think maybe that's overselling it a bit.
I think it was definitely oversold.
But I really enjoyed it though, still. I think it was really tense and suspenseful. The initial premise of this kind of home invasion thriller, I thought was a really nice premise. And the blind guy added a really different kind of twist on the horror element. And a lot of the kind of set pieces that they did when they were in the house, I found myself quite tense, wondering how they'll get out of these situations.
Yeah, there are portions of the film that are set in like the darkness of the man's basement, and it's when you're sort of thrust into that world that he's living in, being completely blind, not being able to see anything, and it really just immerses you in, I guess, the world of the 3 people that have broken into the home, and you're forced to see things as they do, and obviously from the camera's perspective, you can see when the blind man's running around and when things are going on the scene, but you know that they can't see it, and that's you're there with them, you're worried for them.
Yeah, I thought the technical aspects, the cinematography and the sound design was one of the real strengths of the film.
Yeah, beautifully shot.
I thought that scene you're talking about where it all goes dark and the camera just does this nice fade into the night vision mode, that was fantastic. I thought when they first break into the house and the camera's kind of just floating around the house, kind of setting the scene, you're getting to know which room's where and where all the characters are. I thought that worked really well. It was kind of like David Fincher's Panic Room. Setting up the whole area, so that the audience really got a feel for the room and how kind of claustrophobic it was. And the sound design, it was called Don't Breathe. A lot of it was about creaky floorboards and people holding their breath and things like that. So that was really effective.
I really loved how they didn't feel the need to have a soundtrack playing underneath it. You see a lot of horror films nowadays sort of rely on the crutch of having suspenseful music there to build the atmosphere, but because of Don't Breathe, then you're saying you rely on the creaking floorboards, and say a phone goes off in one scene. It's these very small, very minute sounds that the blind man can hear, and that's what sets him off. And it's when you hear these sounds that you really sort of do get that, that almost that terror-filled moment, and you sort of worry for the main characters.
Yeah, but I have a few reservations about the film. Like I said, the danger that they get in kind of escalates slowly, and they find themselves in increasingly, more dangerous situations, and they're trying to get themselves out. It's kind of like a video game. They kind of go up a level each time.
Yeah, that's true.
And I get it. But then there was a point where, for me, it went a little bit too far, and maybe some of the moral complexity of the film was lost, and they kind of went straight into this more of a black and white kind of hero-villain kind of situation.
Yeah. And I think that we'll refrain from obviously spoiling anything here, but when you sort of realise the motivations of the blind man and the reason why he's sort of secluded himself from the rest of the world, I think the film took a turn where it was no longer trying to be this dark, suspenseful piece, and it was sort of relying on a more disturbing element to the film.
Yeah, Nick, one of the other just minor things that annoyed me was maybe the blind man was a little bit too good, because for a guy without sight, he sometimes seemed to know where they were a little bit too much. But the performance of Stephen Lang was very good.
Oh, look, couldn't agree more. I guess the premise of obviously he's a I don't think this gives away too much, but the blind man's sort of an Iraq war veteran who lost his sight while serving. And I get that there's a component of saying, obviously veterans, they're tough, they're hardened guys, but it's almost like he was a daredevil character from Marvel in that he had this almost sixth sense to make up for his sight, where he was almost aware of everything that was going on. And there are scenes in the film where it's almost as if he actually isn't blind. Like he's walking about, I understand he's comfortable with his surroundings, but he's moving freely as if he wasn't visually impaired.
Sure. Just on the trailer though, I didn't watch it going in, and I think I'm glad I didn't, because I read some people who said that there was scenes in the trailer that they thought that gave away a bit too much.
Yeah, I saw the trailer prior to heading in, and that's obviously where I got the whole, I heard the review initially of best horror film in 20 years, and the trailer couldn't agree more with that statement. Like, it gives away quite a lot. A lot of the jump scares, which is, I guess, one of the pivotal aspects of Don't Breathe. There's a lot of them in the film. A lot of them, though, are in the trailer.
But overall, I enjoyed it. I think it's been a good year for thrillers. I think Green Room earlier in the year was a nice,
great
claustrophobic thriller, and 10 Cloverfield Lane last year. You know, there's been a few of these kind of thrillers set in this small kind of claustrophobic environment, and I really enjoyed it.
Look, it's a good formula for success, and they did have. He was a good character, the blind man, obviously, and the other three guys that break into the house. They're decent enough to sort of draw you into the film. I will say this, and I've harped on it a little bit after seeing the review of, is this the best horror film in 20 years? If you're coming into this film expecting to see that, the best horror film in the last 20 years, don't hold your breath.
Story goes, some girl ran over this guy's daughter. Daughter dies, and this rich-ass family pays him off.
Guy is an Army vet loner.
Are we good? He's out. He's a sleeping beauty.
Guys, the money's in the house. It's probably in there.
Why'd you bring a gun? Who's there?
All right, so now taking our focus to the small screen, Jim, you've been watching Vice Principals.
Yeah, there's not a lot going on at the moment. Obviously, we're hanging out for some new fall premieres, but one I've been watching is HBO's Vice Principals, which is a kind of it's a comedy, but it's not a laugh out loud comedy. Like a lot of the humour comes from just the characters being outrageous. So there's not a lot of big laughs, but Danny McBride and Jodie Hill, creators of Eastbound and Down, another cult HBO comedy. They team up again to create Vice Principals, and I'm about halfway through the first season, and it's pretty much Danny McBride doing what he does, doing Danny McBride again.
Okay.
You know, he does. There's pretty much a similar character, foul-mouthed, aggressive, and the show really leans on that humour. So if you like Eastbound and Down, you probably love that again here.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I could watch Danny McBride just yell at people all day. Some of the funny stuff. Walton Goggins in the film, in the show as well. He's good. The story is basically two vice principals trying to compete for the job of principal.
Okay.
And the woman who's already in the role of principal, they try and do everything they can to bring her down, including crossing the line a few times, which is quite funny. It goes a bit further than your average comedy. Sometimes you think this is where a comedy would usually stop, but they just go that little bit further, and
Cool. I guess that's like the signature Danny McBride style of comedy there.
Absolutely.
A little bit further than necessary.
That's right.
This is Vice Principal Neil Gamby. If you do not open this door right now, I'm calling parents. Jesus H. Christ. Party's over. Who drank my Chablis? What wine pairs good with 10 days ISS? Huh? Is it a Zinfandel? Is it a fucking Shiraz?
All right, so Vice Principals has been keeping me going for the time being. Nick, what have you been watching?
In my downtime over the last week and a bit, I've been rewatching an old favourite of mine, Community, which is, and lots of people, it's sort of a cult favourite. It's got a really good fan base here. And there's only 6 seasons out, and then they're pretty much done with it at this point. But it's just an absolute classic as far as I'm concerned. You've got Joel McHale, Danny Pudi, you've got Donald Glover, lots of really great comedic actors. And the writing from Dan Harmon and some of the other writers on staff is just like phenomenal. Hilarious stuff. Have you seen it?
Yeah, absolutely. I loved it at the time, especially the early stuff, the first few seasons. Yeah. It was one of my favourite shows. I thought they maybe just kept bringing it back for maybe a season or two too long.
Yeah, and I think when, everything roughly it was start of the 4th season, and fans of the show would know that the creator of the series, Dan Harmon, he left, he was no longer on staff, he wasn't writing for it. And you got that it was very evident when you were watching it, because the comedy sort of drifted off a little bit, and it's almost as if they were trying to reverse engineer sort of Dan Harmon comedy. So it was funny, but it was nowhere near the first sort of 2-3 seasons. And then when they brought it back for, I think it was the 5th and the 6th season, when it was actually brought it back onto one of Sony's streaming services, it was similar, it was getting better, but it was just, you never can sort of recapture those the golden days.
Yeah, it was so bingeable, wasn't it? The 20-minute episodes, you could just put on a bunch and just watch them, yeah.
The first 3 seasons I have probably seen, not like with no joke, 5 to 6 times a piece. It's the most quotable show. It's on par with The Simpsons in that regard. And the characters are just hilarious.
Yeah, and a lot of great talented actors, like you say. Donald Glover is just starting his own show on FX now called Atlanta, which I'm looking forward to.
Which, yeah, we can talk about in future weeks. I can't wait to see that one. That'll be great.
We are at DEFCON 4. This is the biggest crisis to hit Greendale since we held that rally protesting the wrong Korea.
What do we do now?
We pray.
All right, guys, well, that's what we've been watching this week.
Let us know what you've been watching yourselves down in the comments section below. And look, Jim, that's about all we have time for.
Thanks very much for watching.
We'll see you next week on Frame by Frame.